Hi, everybody. How are you? I hope you're all well. I miss you all so much. But unfortunately, I'm still coming to you live from the Brown home, the Brown farm. And this week, we're going to talk a little bit about poetry. Actually, we will the next few weeks. So I wanted to get us kind of introduced by looking at some figurative language and some different types of things we'll see in poetry, language we'll use in poetry. So, one aspect is figurative language, and we use that in both poetry and prose writing. And basically, we use it more often than we think of. For example, it's raining cats and dogs. Well, no, literally, cats and dogs aren't falling from the sky. That's not what I mean. It's not the literal meaning. It's what I'm actually saying. It's downpouring. It's really, really raining outside. And when I'm able to notice what figurative language is, I can use it in my writing. And I know right now you're rolling your eyes and you're saying, whatever, Mrs. Brown, why am I going to need to? Well, it makes you a stronger, better writer, a stronger, better communicator. So whether you're communicating with a boyfriend or a girlfriend or mom and dad, or it is on your Snapchat or your Instagram story or your TikTok, if you want to be really, really cool, yeah, add some figurative language to make you sound wow, powerful and smart. Okay? So now that we've looked at the definition, let's look at a few of the terms. And you're going to see these terms on a quiz on Schoology, kind of a matching quiz. So you want to pay attention. You want to pay attention here, okay? There are 15 different terms that we're going to go over in this presentation. And the first one I'm going to look at is alliteration. And we see that a lot with tongue twisters. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, you know? Well, alliteration is simply the repetition of an identical consonant sound. And it's usually the beginning of words and they're close in proximity. So the rusty red rider wagon ran down the road. Okay? So the which could also be onomatopoeia if you were saying the pickup started. But in this case, that R sound is repeated. It's the identical consonant sound. We also have an illusion. Now, in one of my YouTube videos that I put up earlier, introducing you to Tiny Tim, I asked you what literary device we used. And many of you came back with alliteration, which is one of them that we used because it's actually be assonance because it's the A sound. But it's also an allusion. I was alluding to Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, which is one of my all-time favorite stories. Tiny Tim is in there. Well, an allusion is when I have an unacknowledged, I don't come right out and say it, reference to something that the writer assumes or hopes readers will recognize. So I could say, chocolate is my Achilles heel. Now, my hope is that you know your Greek mythology and you know who Achilles was and why the heel is so important because that was his weak spot, just like chocolate is my weak spot. Does that make any sense? I hope. All right, then we have onomatopoeia. Now I know you all recognize TikTok as the app, but I don't know if you can hear my clock. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. I formed the word from the sound that the clock is making. Tick tock, tick tock. Or the dog barked. And if you hear a dog bark, 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 it kind of sounds like, okay? Or the engine revved, all right? And when the engine revs, it kind of, something like that. So that's onomatopoeia. Don't you love my sound effects? Then we have a hyperbole, and we worked on these last week with our IXLs. So I could say it's raining cats and dogs, and then you'll notice my picture. I have never been outside in a rainstorm when cats and dogs were falling down. It's an exaggeration for effect. Like several times you guys will tell me, oh, Mrs. Brown, you're killing me when it comes to our homework. That's a hyperbole. You're exaggerating. I haven't lost a student yet. I promise. It won't be that hard. And then we have imagery. Imagery is where I reference things that might trigger our mind to fuse together memories of sights, sound, tastes, smells, sensations of touch. You've heard me talk about, how important smell is to me. Like I have a soap that I order on Subscribe and Save, a Mrs. Meyer's soap that reminds me of the floral sweet smell reminds me of my great grandmother. And so I specifically order that soap because it triggers a happy memory. Maybe there's a sight that you have that you picture, like when you're feeling stressed, you might picture yourself out in the pasture, or maybe you're driving your tractor in the field, or you're riding the four-wheeler or the motorcycle, or if you're like me, the horse in the pasture, something like that that just kind of triggers an image in your mind. Okay? All right. The next one we have is syntax, and syntax is actually just the way I order words in a sentence. Now, the cool thing about poetry is it doesn't follow the same grammar rules that traditional writing does. So I can put my words in any order, and sometimes that can make for a really cool poem. So I could say, Vicky wants Peter to win. Vicky wants who to win? Who does Vicky want to win? Uh, Peter is who Vicky wants to win. I can put those words in any order I want. Then I have Caesura, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but it's basically a pause within a line of poetry. I am not an elegant enough poet to use it. It's usually only used by very elegant poets. You'll see a lot of it in some of your more famous poets, but it gives us a specific pause. Okay, it's going to make sure that even within a line of poetry, the sunrise, sire, compelleth me, because he's sunrise, and I see, therefore, then I love thee. Okay, it gives a very specific pause. All right, now into some more poetry terms. When we look at poetry, we can tell it's poetry basically because it has stanzas. And the stanza could be 2 lines, it could be 4. If we're talking about a sonnet, you're going to have 14 lines. It's definitely broken down into a specific pattern. In that pattern, many times if I'm looking at something with rhyme or rhythm, I am going to have my stressed and unstressed syllables. You've learned before about iambic pentameter. It's, the 5 stressed and unstressed syllables in a line. I am not good at it. Okay, I will admit I am a woman who cannot dance. While you're on quarantine, if you can, watch Seinfeld and watch Julia dance. That's how I dance. Okay, I have no rhythm, and it definitely comes out in my poetry. So a lot of times you're not going to hear me read a poem out loud, but I will give it over to a professional. But that is that A, B, A, B, or A, A, B, B, that stressed and unstressed syllables. That's how we're going to form our rhythm within poetry. Okay? All right. And then we have rhyme. Now, rhyme can either be at the end of a line. Roses are red, violets are blue. I really, really miss you. Okay, you and blue rhyme. Okay, or I can have an internal rhyme, which is an exact rhyme within a line of poetry. And for the life of me right now, I cannot think of one. So hopefully you have an example of one. It's gone. Rap uses it a lot. So look there, I guess. We also have different types of poems. A free verse poem is a poem that doesn't really have a rhyme or a regular meter. It's not like very specific in rhythm all the way through. It can almost look like a story sometimes. So a lot of times, if I give an assignment that says, hey, write a poem, people get hung up on, well, I can't get this to rhyme. I can't rhyme orange, Mrs. Brown. In free verse, you don't have to. Remember those grammar rules? Cool thing about poetry is they don't really apply. We also have epic poems. Now, your senior year, we will read a couple of epic poems, okay, that have a hero in them. Beowulf is one of my favorites, okay? Beowulf is an epic poem about a hero fighting these fierce, fierce monsters. It is a really cool story. So your senior year, you'll get to read some epic poems. We also have haikus. Now, haikus are short little poems. They're composed of 3 unrhymed lines, and they have like 5, 7, and 5 syllables. I think you guys did these somewhere in your elementary career, so you've probably seen them before. Then William Shakespeare is our one famous for sonnets. You look up sonnet, you can find sonnet number blah, blah, blah by William Shakespeare. Okay? And they have a closed form. They have 14 lines, and that's where you're going to find a lot of your iambic pentameter. Okay? How are we doing? All right, so now that we've kind of gone over all of those, I have a quiz on Schoology. It's just a matching quiz. I need you to fill that out. All right? I miss you guys. I love you guys. Good luck. If you have questions, who do you see? This lady right here. Bye, all.